Assalamualaikum. Hello. Today I'll talk a little bit uh, on the course GDT 508, Public Health Epidemiology, right? So the contents of the lecture. Um, Briefly, we go to the synopsis, and the first lecture is entitled Lack of Validity, right? And after that, we have another lecture which is entitled Non-Causal Association in Epidemiological Studies. So these two titles are combined into one lecture. Previous years, these two topics were separated into two different lectures, but this year the two topics are combined into one lecture. So let's go. What we do is for the lack of validity, we look at the objectives of the lecture, perhaps the task for you as students, and how will the lecture be delivered. Then we go to the introduction about lack of validity, the effect of bias. So lack of validity actually means bias, and then how do we classify bias, right? We can classify bias into different types, basically into selection bias, right, and information bias, right? But we do have situations where selection bias and information bias happen together, so we can call this situation as combined selection and information biases. Sparse data bias, biases in trials, clinical trials, and prevention and control of biases, right? So okay, overall this public health epidemiology consists of lectures, group discussion, and task-based exercises to provide practical training in the application of epidemiology in public health. So it emphasizes on the competency, of course, critical interpretation, right, of the epidemiology data in public health, essential for all public health practitioners, right? So we expect you to be able to apply basic knowledge of principal epidemiology in terms of measure of disease occurrence, screening, surveillance, and epidemiological research method, right? So task-based approach using scenarios, right? Very common here, scenarios, and local epidemiology reports, right? So that we can simulate future practice of you candidates of as public health specialists, right? So first lack of validity. So the objective of the lecture, this part of the lecture, is to understand what is lack of validity. It is also known as bias, alright, especially in epidemiological studies. And then you should be able to identify biases in studies, alright. So you need to be able to identify biases in studies, in projects, research, data collection, surveys. You have to be able to identify different types of biases. And not just that, you need to be able to prevent and control biases in epidemiological studies. It means that you should be able to give advices and guidance, alright, how to prevent and how to control bias in studies. You need to be able to do that, right? So it is important for you to read Validity and Bias in Epidemiological Research by Greenland in Oxford Textbook of Public Health, the 5th edition. Alright, but this is a bit difficult text for me, I think. So it's good for you to read, but I don't expect you to understand them fully. Our textbook is this one, right? Epidemiology Beyond Basics. Oh, 3rd edition. I propose you to read the latest edition, the 4th edition, by Sisclo and Nito. And almost all contents for my lectures concerning public health epidemiology were taken from this book. So most of the contents come direct from this book, right? Read the 4th edition, okay? The 4th edition. For light readings, you can read chapter 14 and 15 from Epidemiology book by Gordis, the 5th edition. And lastly, you should be able to apply the examples in the materials, alright? So it means that we might give you simulations, alright? Simulated scenarios, and you should be able to understand the problems and provide solutions to the problem, alright? Right, so I need to erase this, alright? One second. Select that. Oops. Right, never mind. Okay, never mind. Go with this one. All right. So bias can be defined as the result of systematic error. Okay, this is very important. Okay, systematic error in the design or conduct of the study. So this systematic error results from flaws either in the method or in the procedures. So method of selections and procedures for gathering data on relevant exposures and or disease informations. Because of this, the result will tend to be different, right? So there is tendency toward erroneous results, error, and this is bias. Okay, so bias means error. It does not give the correct results. Okay, so because of this thing, when there is bias, there will be lack of validity. It means that it is not completely valid, right? Bias. Again, result of systematic error in the design or conduct of study plus selections of participants, right? If the design and procedures are unbiased, the study is valid, right? Which means it is correct. If it is biased, it is not valid, it is not correct. Okay. Right, so if you look at this plots, you will see that this is the truth. This should be the truth, which actually we don't know. We don't know the truth, right? And you do the study, and there is deviations of your results from the truth. So that is bias, all right? Right. This is your result, the average result. This is the truth, and difference between the two is bias. Okay. This is figure 4.1 in epidemiology beyond basics. So the concept of bias, again, it means that lack of internal validity or incorrect assessment. Incorrect means wrong assessment of the association between an exposure and an effect in the target population. So this one actually does not equal the true value, not true, wrong value. All right. So prevention and control are basically important. How to achieve that? You can achieve that in 3 levels. Sorry for my cat. All right. See here. Number 1 is ensuring that the study design is appropriate. Number 2, carefully monitor procedure of data collection. Right? So my cat is here. I need to pause for a little while. Okay, let us pause this.